Shattering read, Chapter 13, Amenities. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, not for anything more than the comfort of the touch of another body. They were only a few short hours away from Aphthonia, and with the help of Luck's fake profiles, they should be able to blend in plain sight. Luck's clothing should also blend the sonic frequencies to stop them from giving the desired information so they could walk in without Vita getting targeted right away. It was now just a matter of returning to where they were going to cause some kind of resolve, for better or for worse. Vita's stomach would not leave her alone, because she was stuck in thought, sitting on the ground as Luck packed their house. They hadn't bothered to clean up their stuff, which had been tossed about their spacious moving cube when he activated the deconstruction mode. The cube spat all their objects out in a neat bag that only took him a few minutes to fold. The comment Suvi had made when he left about him being a cheater echoed through Vita's head. "How did you come across that journal?" "The cheat sheet of yours," she clarified. He helped her off the ground and started walking towards Petunia. "It's a long story. He hopped on the mount." Vita blinked at him and concealed a laugh. He was not in on the joke. "What?" "We're not too far from our destination. Petunia goes against local laws. We're probably going to want to move the rest of the way on foot on the random chance we may come across hikers." She spoke as if he should know. "It's not super likely, but stranger things have happened." "There's still a ton of mileage between us and the city," he pouted. "Are you afraid of walking?" Vita contended. "No, I just don't want to," he fussed. She crossed over and pushed the button that turned Petunia back into a backpack. She then lifted the pack up to him so he would put it on. "It's good for you and your string bean legs. Now, how did you find that journal?" Vita brought the conversation right back around. She hoped he would fill the whole journey with conversation so she didn't have to try, and that he'd bring some distraction from the constant buzzing in her ear that seemed to be a new feature of life. She got her wish. As she adjusted their bearings, he started to talk openly. "My mother died when I was 11. He was cut off by a question. "How old are you now?" Vita had wanted to ask for a while, but hadn't had the opportunity. 33, he replied. "And you?" 27. She had thought he was a few years older, while he thought she was a few years younger. "So my mother, Valadia, died when I was 11 years old. I was one of 5 kids, all of whom were fatherless. My mom did what she had to do to scrape by, and it took its toll on her. When she was gone, we were in the same position she had been when she was 14 and had to figure it out for ourselves." He paused to inspect her reaction, which was non-judgmental, but he still had to give more. She was not a bad person. In fact, she was a good, loving mother. The world just ate her. He shrugged. It left us needing money to pay for all the basics, and that was and is expensive. My older sister was done with us and took my youngest brother and left. That left me, Suvi, and Vance. I can't blame Rita for leaving either, she was a kid too. We would visit on occasion, and Kin turned into a real man of society. So, can I say she did him wrong? "I don't know if there was a right in that situation," said Vita, taking in all the information he was giving her. She saw how he recoiled just by bringing up the topic. Luck visibly calmed, and he reoriented the conversation. "I would sneak off at night to take some local classes offered by some older teens that felt bad for me. They started teaching me the ins and outs of getting through a system that did nothing but hold our heads underwater." There was a tinge of excitement and resentment in his voice. "I wound up in a robot fight and won. And I heard some men talking about leaving on an excursion to look for Anentimos Enotios' journal, hoping to use that knowledge for their own personal gain with the system. They had heard rumors of it being near his gravesite, which was rumored to be in the last city to get installed with the Entomo system. I was 14 by that time, and they took me with them. They gave up on the journal when we managed to reach Provost. None of them had family to return to, and Provost was a beautiful place full of plenty. Their government went with something more like what your city did, it seems." Enotios wrote on his regrets with interim. "Had I not still had family struggling at home, I would have stayed. I made the journey back alone, and it nearly killed me." But here I am today, and I would argue I am much stronger for it. Vita was in complete awe of the person standing before her, then thought about all she went through recently and realized awe really wasn't the appropriate emotion. But it was the only word that came to mind. That bothered her. I would agree. You've been through so much, she offered lamely. Yeah, it would be nice to settle down for a bit. Luck pulled out his Tomo in response and started working on their video again, leaving her free to wonder about why awesome was not an appropriate response and why she didn't seem to move past that word. By this time, she was beginning to pick up on identifiable landmarks around them, which made her heart do somersaults in exultation at being home and fear of what to expect upon arrival. They decided to go all the way around Apthonia's ginormous walls to the easternmost entrance by the ocean. It was not a popular destination for the smell and for old hazardous waste, which most people just did not want to accidentally bumble into by not paying attention. It was just about noon, and the breeze was a welcomed friend. I never really made it to this district, she stated as they took a left around a red brick building. I'm more than positive there's a registrar's office just a few blocks down from here. The large red lily-type flowers that lined the streets in pots were enticing lots of visitors, humans and non, with their potent floral scents. A merchant in a temporary roadside shop was offering homemade wine to them, almost making it a pleasant afternoon. Just for a moment. They left at the registrar's, and Luck entered, leaving Vita on the street. Even though it was the peak of summer, she felt the creeping chill of fall envelop her. It almost felt like she was 10 again, and starting new classes with other students. Except the anxiety about danger this time was palpable. People milled about, going home from work or headed about to eat dinner. The street echoed with the footfalls of blissful ignorance. It caught Vita hard. This was the first time she had been alone in over a week. Things she had not processed were starting to bombard her, and she inhaled sharply. A large, warm hand grabbed her shoulder. She looked back, and Luck held up 2 key cards with a smile. Her emotions tucked themselves away again. You ready to sleep in a real bed? He asked. Only after a long shower. What's our address? She asked, stretching excitedly and taking one of the access keys. The address on the card had a glowing red dot indicating their new abode. It was on the outskirts in a derelict part of town, and a little line of blue dots on the card showed them a path through the city to get there from where they were standing. This part of town was where those who struggled with the aspects of society could live and get their situation in order. You had to put in a bare minimum existence to the system in order to receive more than the basics of the basics. Some people were perfectly fine living off the bare minimum. The Antomo made that possible. People still had healthy lives without their devotion to the people. The state was under the assumption that Luck's current nice apartment, under the guise of Clint Hillman, was going through a state-mandated remodel. Someone had crashed through the building, and it was going to take a few days of programming to get the new building set up with accurate diagnostics, according to the lie he had spun. It was enough for him to get close to a computer and have their fake profiles entered into the system on a very superficial level. That ploy would work as long as no one actually got too curious about who they were. Luck was relying on the system being a system. Vita hated the loose thread as they were walking and wondered when it would become a tightrope act. Don't worry, Luck squeezed Vita's shoulders as they entered their temporary living quarters. I sent spider bots ahead. They have already thrown up a cloaking device. We can talk freely while we're in this apartment. They feed the machine random conversation and muck up sonic frequency. It was an 1,100 square foot apartment, already furnished with the most basic, no-frills furniture and painted in shades of gray. There was a couch and large television. Luck had already turned it on to a news station to start picking up on their politics, and Vita dashed to the bathroom. When she crawled out of the endless supply of warm water, Luck was dancing by the door. She picked her outfit out of the cleaning closet and opened the door so he could have the steamy place. Once dressed, she sat on the couch and watched all the horrors of the last week parade across the screen. Talbot had started running for Council Select on the platform of expanding the town to include another surrogacy center. Echoes of screams from the videos Verithy had recorded ran through the back of her mind as she watched the pale old man wave confidently at the screen. Luck returned, looked at the wrinkles, and laughed. "That is our target?" he asked, taking the seat next to her. He too had showered and figured out the cleaning alcove for clothing. She nodded without noise. "I don't think you have too much to worry about. Look at how old he is." The camera then panned out and displayed the massive number of women cheering at his words. "He's been doing this a while. Just because he's old doesn't mean he's slow," she retorted. The newscasters and their plastic smiles showed numbers reporting the lead runners, and Talbot was, alarmingly, in second. Her blood ran cold at the thought of him getting such political power, and how easily that could happen at this point. The male broadcaster announced that no one should forget that the biggest public forum was being held on Saturday. Vita was already exhausted from the news. She gathered her access card and made to leave. "I'm going to the local pantry to gather some food supplies." She just needed to walk, and they needed food anyway. "I'll have a plan that we can discuss by the time you get back. We can discuss it over dinner?" Luck asked, completely enwrapped in the information the television was spewing at him. Clearly, he was getting more out of the programming than she was, and she decided to be thankful for that. "I won't be that long," she said, opening the door. "It's not a lengthy plan," he playfully yelled after her as she shut it. She arrived at the local pantry and swiped her card. The glass door slid aside. She looked at the digital square on her pass and noticed that Luck had made sure that they had plenty of credits lined up. She would like to understand how he had pulled that one off. She was pleased that she wouldn't have to serve up her favorite cricket and grub dishes for dinner. It wasn't even that crickets were terrible tasting, but they took a long time to work with. The poor had to process what they needed to eat. They were guaranteed food, but good food was only priced for those who served the system. Vertical farming had saved their whole city, but there was still a social order in the socialist utopia. She grabbed enough food to last for up to 2 weeks, which should have been more than enough. The clerk eyed her in awe at the bounty, one of her eyes not tracking properly. Vita asked for 2 bottles of wine and a pack of the cannabis cigarettes. "Is you having a party?" she asked Vita. "Yeah, my Boma is turning 90. I came all the way across town to pick up supplies for a surprise party." Everyone pitched in a little. Vita smiled a little too big at the nosy woman who rolled her eyes. "Oh, well, good for them. I thought you might be stocking up for this year's ceremonies. It's only 5 days away, and it can make people do some crazy things. Sorry if I nosed around. We just have our regulars, and you got the best of my curiosity." The woman, labeled Darcy, smiled. "Do you need anything else?" "I wasn't trying to cause a problem," Vita replied in an apologetic manner. She had been in a poorer district, but she hadn't been aware it was so poor that stocking up on the pantry would make her stick out. "You're not. If anything, my manager will be on me for not trying to make you get your dailies here." Darcy giggled and ended on a snort that made Vita struggle to keep a straight face. "Tell him you tried, but an hour out of my way just isn't worth it." She made sure that the clerk took a big tip from her surplus of credits to make sure that the story stuck in the girl's head. "Have coffee on me for a month as thanks for the headaches," she added for good measure. An unusual story usually stuck in your mind here and floated around town faster than Vita had ever cared. That's what happens when the government becomes the support net for everything. It wasn't advertised, but it was a rule known throughout the city. No one talked about it. Most people just complied, and it wasn't a problem, or so they were taught to believe. For those who didn't take to that notion easily, there were forced therapies and work services that would eventually get them in compliance to the system. The social structure that kept the city in order was a frightening force. But soon, Vita and Luck would hopefully enlighten the general populace to the fallacy of perfection it so wholeheartedly clung to. Thanks so much for listening to Chapter 13 of Shattering Red. If you have liked what you've heard so far, please be sure to like, follow, subscribe for updates on whatever next is coming out. If you would like to purchase the book, it's available on Amazon and most other online book retailers. If you don't want to purchase the book, but have liked it so far and would like to do something, I will also include a link to my Kofi. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you take care.